The penthouse was silent, except for the hum of the city far below. Min-Soo stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his reflection ghostly against the glittering Seoul skyline. He was a man built from contradictions tailored suit, hands that had never known hard labor, yet eyes that had seen too much. Ji-Hyun watched him from the doorway, her heart a tangled knot of love and suspicion. "Min-Soo," she said softly, stepping into the room. "You've been distant lately. More than usual." He didn't turn. "Work has been demanding." "Work," she repeated, the word tasting bitter. "You come home at dawn, your phone never stops buzzing, and you flinch whenever I touch your back. What kind of work demands that?" Now he turned, and she saw the flicker of something raw in his gaze. "I'm building something, Ji-Hyun. Something that will secure our future." "Our future?" She moved closer, her heels clicking on the marble floor. "I don't even know what you do. You say investments, but there are no papers, no meetings I can attend, just secrets." The clock on the wall ticked loud in the silence. Min-Soo's jaw tightened. "Some things are better left unknown. Not to a wife." Her voice cracked. "Not to someone who loves you." He crossed the room and took her hands. His palm was warm, but she felt the tremor in his fingers. "Ji-Hyun, I need you to trust me. Just a little longer." "How much longer?" She pulled away, her eyes glistening. "Until your secrets destroy us?" The doorbell rang, sharp and intrusive. Min-Soo's posture changed, shoulders squaring, eyes hardening. "Stay here," he ordered. "Who is it?" "Just stay." He walked out, and Ji-Hyun followed anyway, pressing herself against the hallway wall. Through the frosted glass of the front door, she saw two men in black suits. One handed Min-Soo a leather folder. She caught a glimpse of her father's name on the documents before Min-Soo snapped it shut. "Tell him I'll handle it," Min-Soo said, his voice low and cold. "No one touches his company." No, the men left. Min-Soo stood motionless, the folder pressed against his chest like a shield. Ji-Hyun stepped into the light. "Min-Soo, why does my father's company have anything to do with you?" He closed his eyes, and for a moment he looked exhausted not from work, but from the weight of a life he never chose. "Your father is in debt. Dangerous people. I've been paying them off." "Dangerous people?" She felt the floor tilt. "You're protecting my family? But how can you? Who are you, Min-Soo?" He opened the folder and handed it to her. Inside were photographs, bank statements, and a list of names. Her father's signature on loan agreements. And at the bottom, a seal she recognized from the news, the emblem of the Busan syndicate. "I'm not just a businessman," Min-Soo said quietly. "I'm the man who runs the organization your father borrowed from." Ji-Hyun's hands shook. The papers rustled like dry leaves. "You're a gangster." "I was 17 when I joined," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "My own father owed debts. I paid them with my life. I climbed, I survived, I built legitimate businesses on the side. But the roots never die." "And you married me? Knowing what you are?" "Knowing that I loved you, and that one day your family would need protection." He reached for her, but she stepped back. "Ji-Hyun, I've been trying to leave." "Every deal, every meeting it's been to buy my way out. Your father's debt was the last chain. You should have told me." Tears streamed down her face. "You should have let me decide if I wanted to be married to a monster." "I'm not a monster," his voice broke. "I'm a man who did monstrous things to survive. But I've never hurt you. I never will." She looked at the folder, at the photographs of men with cold eyes and harder smiles. Then she looked at her husband, the man who held her when she cried, who remembered her coffee order, who had just admitted to carrying the weight of her family's safety. "I need time," she whispered. "Take all the time you need." He let the folder fall to the floor. "But know this. I'm leaving the syndicate. Tomorrow. I've already arranged it. The only thing I want is you." The city lights flickered beyond the window. Ji-Hyun walked to the glass and pressed her palm against it, feeling the cold seep into her skin. Behind her, Min-Soo stood still, waiting. I don't know if I can forgive you, she said without turning. But I need to know the truth. All of it. He nodded, even though she couldn't see. I'll tell you everything, and then you can decide. The silence stretched between them, filled with the hum of a city that never slept, and the quiet breaking of a marriage that had just learned its foundation was built on sand. Ji-Hyun's hands were clenched into fists at her sides, her anger and betrayal simmering just below the surface. She could feel the cold sweat on her palms, the fabric of her dress twisting between her fingers. Don't play dumb, Min-Soo. I know about your secret life. I know you're the boss of the Korean Mafia. The words hung in the air like a challenge, and for a moment, Min-Soo seemed to freeze. His eyes locked on hers. The clock on the wall ticked loud in the silence, each second stretching into an eternity. Then, with a slow nod, he set his drink down and stood up, his movements fluid and controlled. The glass made a soft sound against the mahogany table. I suppose it was only a matter of time before you found out, he said, his voice resigned. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she had seen 1,000 times, but now it felt different, heavier. But you have to understand, Ji-Hyun. This is who I am. This is what I've always been. Ji-Hyun's laughter was cold and mirthless, a sharp sound that cut through the room. You're telling me that you're a mafia boss, and that's just something I have to accept? That's not something you can just spring on someone, Min-Soo. The tension between them was palpable, the air thick with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. Ji-Hyun could smell the faint scent of his cologne, the same one he had worn on their wedding day. It mixed with the bitterness in her throat. Min-Soo took a step closer to Ji-Hyun, his eyes pleading. I know this is a lot to take in, but I'm still the same person you married. I still love you, Ji-Hyun. His hand reached out, but she pulled back, her body rigid. Ji-Hyun's expression was unreadable, her voice flat. I don't know if I can do this, Min-Soo. I don't know if I can be married to a mafia boss. She turned away from him, walking to the window. The city lights of Seoul flickered below, a sea of neon and shadows. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass, feeling the vibration of the traffic outside. Her mind raced with images of their life together, the dinners, the laughter, the nights when he held her close. Were all of them lies? She heard him exhale behind her, a long, weary sound. Ji-Hyun, please, let me explain. His voice was low, almost a whisper. Explain what? She said without turning around. That you've been hiding a criminal empire from me? That every time you said you were at a business meeting, you were doing God knows what? I was protecting you, he said. If anyone knew you were connected to me, they would have come after you. She laughed again, but this time it was bitter, hollow. Protecting me? You think putting me in a cage of lies is protection? As the truth hung in the balance, Ji-Hyun's family was dealt a devastating blow. Her parents, respected members of society, were shocked and outraged by the revelation. Her mother's voice trembled with anger and disappointment as she stood in their living room, her hands gripping the back of a chair. How could you keep this from us, Ji-Hyun? We raised you better than this. Her father, a stern expression on his face, added, We can't just stand by and do nothing. We have to protect our family's reputation. Ji-Hyun's brother, once close to Min-Soo, now stood against him, his loyalty to his family clear. We can't trust him, Ji-Hyun, he said, his voice firm. He crossed his arms, his jaw tight. He's lied to us for too long. How do we know anything he said was real? The family dynamics shifted and realigned like tectonic plates grinding against each other. Her mother cried into a handkerchief. Her father paced the floor, his shoes clicking against the hardwood. Ji-Hyun's brother kept his gaze fixed on the door, as if expecting Min-Soo to walk in at any moment. Ji-Hyun sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands folded in her lap. She could feel the weight of their stares, the pressure of their expectations. She thought about Min-Soo's face when she had walked out, the way his shoulders had slumped. She thought about the ring on her finger, the one he had given her on a rainy evening in Gangnam. Was it all part of the act? What do we do now? She asked, her voice barely audible. Her father stopped pacing. We cut ties. We distance ourselves. We pretend this never happened. The air was heavy with tension as Ji-Hyun's mother finally broke the silence. "And Min-Soo?" she asked, her voice laced with a mix of sadness and concern. "He's on his own," Ji-Hyun replied, her words barely above a whisper. The silence that followed was oppressive, punctuated only by the sound of her mother's quiet sobs. Ji-Hyun's gaze fell upon her hands, her eyes fixing on the ring that now felt like a suffocating chain. The weight of Min-Soo's secrets threatened to crush her. Nothing would ever be the same again. The revelation of his hidden life as a Korean Mafia boss had unleashed a maelstrom, and she was unsure if she could weather the storm. Morning light crept through the curtains of their apartment, casting pale stripes across the wooden floor. Ji-Hyun sat at the kitchen table, her coffee long, cold, and forgotten. Sleep had eluded her, and every time she closed her eyes, she was haunted by the documents, the accounts, and the photographs of men who regarded Min-Soo with a mix of fear and respect. The clock on the wall ticked away, each second feeling like a small hammer striking against her chest. Min-Soo stood by the window, his back to her, his shoulders squared in a posture that seemed both defensive and resolute. He had not attempted to explain himself again, instead opting to wait in silence. His hands were clasped behind him, and Ji-Hyun noticed the faint tremor in his fingers, a subtle crack in the facade of his usual composure. For the first time in their marriage, he appeared uncertain, vulnerable. "I need to know everything," Ji-Hyun said finally, her voice steady despite the turmoil that churned within her. Her hands shook as she wrapped them around the cup, the warm ceramic a meager comfort against her palms. Min-Soo turned to face her, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep, his face etched with the weight of his secrets. "I was 17 when I joined them," he began, his voice low and measured. "My father owed a debt he could never repay. They came for the money, and when there was none, they came for me." Ji-Hyun's gaze held his, unyielding. "And the businesses? The charity foundations? The hospital wing with your name on it?" She needed to understand, to reconcile the man she thought she knew with the one who stood before her. "Clean money," Min-Soo replied, his voice laced with a mix of exhaustion and determination. "I built those after I took control. Every legitimate operation I own was built to bury the other side of my life." He paused, rubbing his forehead as if to ward off the weight of his memories. "But the foundations, the investments, the company that employs your brother, those are real. They were never a lie." Ji-Hyun yearned to believe him, to cling to the man she thought she knew, the man who had held her when her mother passed, who had stayed up all night helping her sister prepare for university exams, who had never raised his voice in anger. That man could not be the same one who signed orders that ruined families. She recalled the way he had held her mother's hand at the hospital, the gentle way he had spoken to the nurses. That man could not be a monster, but he was. The doorbell rang, shattering the fragile silence. Min-Soo's posture changed instantly, his shoulders squaring, his eyes sharpening. He moved toward the door with a quiet command, his footsteps deliberate and measured. "Stay inside," he said, his voice firm, not a request, but an order. Through the window, Ji-Hyun saw 3 black cars parked outside, their sleek bodies a stark contrast to the warm morning light. Men in dark suits stood by the gate, their faces impassive, yet their eyes betraying a hint of tension. Her father-in-law was among them, his face a mask of stone, his expensive gray suit a testament to his wealth, but his eyes cold and unyielding. The morning air seemed to grow heavier, as if the weight of their secrets was finally beginning to lift. Min-Soo opened the door and stepped out, his movements calm and deliberate. Ji-Hyun heard fragments of conversation, voices low and tense, the words indistinguishable, but the emotions palpable. Her father-in-law's voice rose once, then fell, the sound echoing through the stillness. Then silence. The wind carried the sound of distant traffic, a reminder of the world beyond their little bubble. A bird landed on the windowsill and flew away, its sudden departure a stark contrast to the stillness that had settled over the scene. Minutes passed, each one ticking by like a countdown to a new beginning. Ji-Hyun pressed her hand against the cold glass, feeling the chills seep into her bones. She saw Min-Soo nod once, then turn and walk back inside, his movements economical, yet laced with a sense of relief. The men in suits did not follow. They stood there for a moment, then returned to their cars, their black silhouettes disappearing into the morning light. "It's over," he said, his voice low and husky as he sat down across from her. "The board knows. The investors know. They came to confirm, not to threaten." Ji-Hyun's eyes locked onto his, searching for the truth, searching for the man she thought she knew. "Your father," she started, but Min-Soo cut her off, his voice firm yet gentle. "He is no longer involved. I bought his shares last night. I own the company completely now." He sat back, his eyes never leaving hers, his face a map of lines and creases, etched into his skin like a testament to his journey. He took a deep breath, the sound filling the silence, as he continued. "Everything I built to leave that world. Today, I finally did." Ji-Hyun studied his face, seeing the man she married, seeing the boy who had no choice, who made terrible decisions to survive, who spent 20 years trying to undo what he had become. She saw the weight he carried in the lines around his mouth, the weight of his secrets, the weight of his past. "I can't promise to forget," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, as she struggled to come to terms with the revelation. "I can't promise to trust you the same way," she continued, her eyes searching his, searching for a glimmer of hope. "I know," he said, his voice soft, his eyes filled with a deep understanding. "But I can promise to try," she said, her voice firm, yet laced with a sense of uncertainty. He reached across the table, his hand extended, his palm warm, his fingers calloused from years of work, from years of holding on to things that should have slipped away. After a long moment, she placed her hand in his, feeling the warmth spread through her, feeling the connection that still existed between them. Outside, the black cars drove away, their engines fading into the distance as the morning grew brighter, the sunlight streaming through the window, casting a warm glow over the scene. The coffee was cold, but neither of them cared. As they sat there, hands entwined, their eyes locked onto each other, their hearts filled with a sense of hope, a sense of new beginnings, the Korean Mafia boss's hidden billionaire identity had been revealed, and his wife's family couldn't breathe. But now, they could start breathing again. They had a long road ahead, but at least they would walk it together, hand in hand, their hearts filled with a sense of possibility.